Well, bless my heart, I never thought I'd find myself sitting here, in the passenger seat of Lisa's car on a warm, sunny afternoon, surrounded by mountains. My heart flutters like a hummingbird, a mix of excitement and nerves knowing this trip marks the beginning of a new chapter in my life. I'm just so happy, I started, my voice quivering like a leaf in the wind, but full of gratitude. I never thought anyone would want to adopt me, especially now that I'm nearly 17. Most folks want babies or tiny tots, you know? I could feel my eyes welling up, like two little ponds reflecting all the emotions swirling inside me. Lisa, bless her, gave me the warmest look as she drove, like a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day. She told me, gentle as can be, that she understood. From our very first meeting, she said, she felt something special about me. It was like a little voice telling her I'd be the perfect companion for her daughter, Sarah. The way Lisa spoke, mixing seriousness and love, it was as if each word was carefully picked like the ripest fruit from a tree. She explained that Sarah needed a friend, someone who could understand her situation. And of course, she hoped I could help a bit with Sarah's care. Poor thing has a mighty difficult illness that keeps her homebound. I nodded, taking in the gravity of Lisa's tone. My eyes must have been shining with a mix of determination and compassion, I'm sure. You can count on me, Lisa, I said, my voice firm but soft, like a well-worn quilt. Just being away from the orphanage and not having to face what I did there, it's more than I could have ever hoped for. I paused for a moment, gathering my courage like a squirrel gathering nuts for winter. Life at the orphanage was tough. Being one of the older kids meant watching my chances of adoption dwindle, year after year. I gazed out the window, watching the streets roll by. It was more than just being lonely, I continued, my voice low but clear as a bell. It felt like becoming invisible, unwanted. The nights were the worst, hearing the little ones crying, knowing I couldn't give them the family they longed for. I turned to Lisa, my eyes shining with a mix of sadness and hope, like the sky just before sunrise. But now, it's like I've been given a second chance at life. And I promise you, I'll do right by Sarah and your family. As we drove along, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope, like a tiny spark in the darkness. Being here with you and Sarah, it feels like I'm getting a fresh start, I said, my voice filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. It's like I'm finally getting the chance to be part of a family, something I've always dreamed of. I quickly added, wanting to show Lisa my determination, I know taking care of Sarah will be a challenge, but I'm ready for it. My mind wandered back to the orphanage, and I found myself sharing, back at the orphanage, I often helped with the little ones. I'd care for them when they were sick or feeling blue. A small smile played on my lips as I realized, in a way, I guess that prepared me for being here now, ready to help Sarah. Lisa's face lit up with a smile that was as warm as a summer's day, relief and gratitude evident in her eyes. She told me she knew there was something special about me, that I had a kind heart. According to her, that was exactly what Sarah needed. She paused for a moment, her expression turning a bit more serious. Lisa explained that the nurses hadn't worked out well, either not clicking with Sarah or being too overbearing. She emphasized that Sarah was a delicate soul who needed someone she could trust. I understand, I responded, my voice steady as a rock. I promised her I wouldn't let her down, that I'd do my best to be a good sister to Sarah and help out wherever needed. As I gazed out the window, watching the last lights of the town slip by, I felt a sense of purpose growing inside me, like a seedling pushing through the soil. Lisa drove in silence for a few minutes, lost in thought. When she spoke again, her voice was soft but clear. She told me Sarah was about to turn 19, but was still very young mentally. Her illness had kept her isolated from the world for a long time. Lisa expressed her hope that Sarah and I could grow together as sisters. Feeling a growing connection to my new family, I turned to Lisa and asked, could you tell me more about Sarah? My voice was gentle, filled with genuine interest and compassion. Lisa sighed, her eyes a mix of sadness and love. She began to tell me about Sarah, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. Sarah had always been a fragile child, Lisa explained, needing constant care since she was little. With a hint of pain in her voice, Lisa shared that this was one of the reasons her ex-husband, Sarah's father, had left them. He couldn't understand that the attention Lisa gave Sarah was exactly what she needed. As Lisa spoke, I felt my heart ache for both of them. As we neared the house, my jaw dropped. The mansion was grand as all get out, with elegant architecture that would make even the fanciest houses in those TV shows look like shacks. The surrounding gardens were manicured to perfection, like something out of a fairy tale. "Oh my stars, Lisa," I exclaimed, my eyes shining brighter than a new penny. "Your house is absolutely breathtaking. I've never seen anything like this, not even on an online video." Lisa smiled, looking as proud as she pointed towards the house. She explained that while she had worked hard as a doctor, this house was actually an inheritance from her parents. Then, she said something that shocked me. She told me that this was now my home too, and that I should consider it completely my own. Well, I'll be darned if that didn't make me feel like I'd won the lottery and found a long-lost family all in one day. As Lisa placed her hand on my shoulder and guided me inside, I felt a warmth spreading through me, like a cozy blanket on a chilly night. We walked through the house, and I was taking in every detail like a sponge soaking up water. As Lisa finally opened the door to my room, I felt like I was stepping into a dream. The room was as big as the whole dormitory back at the orphanage, and prettier than a picture. It was decorated with more taste than a fancy restaurant, and the sunlight pouring in made it feel like heaven on earth. Well, I'll tell you, my emotions got the better of me faster than a cat chasing a mouse. Before I knew it, I was down on my knees, tears of gratitude and relief rolling down my face like a summer rain. "Thank you, Lord," I whispered, my voice shaking like a leaf, "for hearing all my prayers." My mind wandered back to those tough years at the orphanage, each memory feeling like a weight on my heart. Lisa, bless her heart, must have seen something in my reaction that touched her. She asked me, gentle as a lamb, if they'd treated me that badly at the orphanage. I could hear the worry and sadness in her voice, clear as a bell. Still sitting on the floor, I nodded, feeling as small as a mustard seed. "It was rough as a cob," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I told her how they'd always poked fun at my size, saying no one would ever want me in their family. They'd say I'd end up on the streets after leaving the orphanage, good for nothing. Those words still stung like a bee, but Lord, the relief of leaving all that behind felt like a cool drink on a hot day. Lisa, sweet as pie, sat down next to me and offered some comfort. She told me I had a home now, my own room, and a sister to look after. She even said she'd help me out with money to buy my own things. Her voice was as gentle as a summer breeze, but firm as an oak tree when she said I deserved to start a new life here. Then, she changed her tone and added something serious. She asked me not to be a bad influence on Sarah. She didn't want me talking to Sarah about boys or the outside world. Even though Sarah was 19, Lisa said she was still her baby and didn't need to know about such things. I could hear the mama bear in her voice, protective as all get out. I looked at Lisa, understanding her worry like I'd known her all my life. "I understand, Lisa," I said, my voice steady as a rock. "I'll respect your rules and do my best to be a good sister to Sarah and a positive influence." As I stood up from the floor, wiping away my tears, I felt a new sense of purpose wash over me, strong as an oak tree. Stepping into Sarah's room was like walking into a fairy tale, I kid you not. Everything, from the delicate curtains to the soft quilt on the bed, was as pink as cotton candy at the county fair. Stuffed animals and toys were scattered about, creating an atmosphere that'd make Walt Disney green with envy. Now, I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but something about it struck me as peculiar. Pretty as a picture, sure, but it was more fitting for a little girl than a young woman of 19. It seemed a mite restrictive for poor Sarah, if you ask me. But then I remembered her condition, and I pushed that thought away fast. There in the corner, sitting pretty in her wheelchair, was Sarah herself. She had a book in her hands, looking for all the world like a little angel. When she saw me, her face lit up bright. She quickly grabbed a handkerchief to cover her thinning hair, looking a bit sheepish. Sarah's voice was as soft and sweet as a summer breeze when she spoke. She told me she'd been wishing for a sister for the longest time, and she could hardly believe I was really there. Her mama knew how lonely she'd been, she said, and how she never quite clicked with the caregivers. She was as pleased as Punch that I'd be her companion. Well, I'll tell you, hearing Sarah's words sent a wave of tenderness through me that was warmer than fresh-baked bread. I could see the innocence and fragility in that young woman clear as day. Of course, Sarah, I said, my heart swelling up like a balloon. I'm tickled pink to be your sister. I'll take care of you, but I want us to be friends too. My heart was fuller than a tick on a hound dog, filled with empathy for Sarah's situation. Just then, Lisa chimed in from the doorway, her voice sharper than a tack. She said it was all fine and dandy as long as Sarah didn't forget about her mama, and we didn't talk about any foolishness. Just girly stuff, she said, sounding possessive. I tell you, I was surprised. For a hot second, I thought I sensed a hint of jealousy, but I shut that thought down quickly. I figured it was just a mama bear worried about her sick cub. Sarah, bless her heart, must have felt the tension. She changed the subject fast. I'll tell you what, those first few days after I arrived were a real eye-opener. Quickly, I realized the size of the responsibility perched on my shoulders was big. Now, this house was pretty, but with no staff around, every room became my new workplace. My days were full, from sweeping floors to wiping windows that surrounded the garden outside. One morning, while I was busy, Lisa waltzed into the kitchen looking thoughtful as a philosopher. The aroma of fresh brewed coffee was mingling with the sweet scent of fruit I was cutting up. Lisa leaned against the granite counter and asked if she could lend my ear for a minute. She wanted to know if all these chores were becoming too much for me, especially being new to the house and all. Well, I'll be darned if I didn't stop mid-slice, knife still in hand, and looked at her with a mix of surprise and understanding in my eyes. Not at all, I said, honest as the day is long. I explained how back at the orphanage, life was always about choosing to be independent. We had to do everything ourselves, cleaning, cooking, looking after each other. I was used to hard work, and truth be told, I was happy to contribute here. As I went back to slicing fruit, my mind was chewing on the peculiar feeling of being in a house that seemed so full yet so empty at the same time. Lisa let out a sigh of relief, but I could see another question brewing behind her eyes. She asked about my cooking skills, wondering if I'd learned that at the orphanage too. Apparently, she'd had to let the cook go recently. Her voice was casual, but I felt a tension in the air, like this topic was making Lisa nervous. I pondered for a moment before answering. I told her I'd helped out in the kitchen plenty and could whip up meals that were simple but tasty. And if need be, I was ready to learn more fast. As I spoke, I watched Lisa carefully, trying to unravel the mystery that seemed to be hiding behind each firing in this house. Lisa's words struck me with unexpected force. That's wonderful, she said, but her smile was strained, like a mask that didn't quite fit. Lisa explained that Sarah had a very delicate stomach, so she usually only managed soup and tiny portions. She said there was no need for anything fancy, and when Sarah was particularly weak, they had to give her medicine through an IV. My curiosity got the better of me, and I gently asked if Sarah ever ate anything different, like a salad or something more nutritious. I could hear the mix of surprise and genuine concern in my own voice, as if I just learned something that didn't quite add up. But quick as a flash, Lisa's expression hardened, reminding me of the stern school teachers from back in my day. She firmly stated that she knew what was best for Sarah, and it was crucial that I follow her instructions precisely. We don't want any problems, Ashley, she said, her voice as cold and unyielding as a winter frost. It was clear as day she wasn't leaving any room for questions or discussion. In that moment, I felt like I was seeing a different side of Lisa, one I hadn't expected to encounter. The weight of her words settled on me like a heavy blanket, and I nodded, assuring her I didn't mean to pry. I told her I only wanted what was best for Sarah, just as she did. As I lowered my eyes, I felt a whirlwind of emotions inside me, a mix of confusion and worry that left me feeling unsettled. The dynamics in that house were more complex than I'd realized, like a puzzle where each piece revealed more questions than answers. One quiet afternoon, when Lisa was out, I found myself in the living room, feeling a nervous anticipation building inside me. Sarah was right there beside me, wrapped in a soft blanket, her gaze fixed on the garden outside as if lost in thought. I had a book in my lap, closed tight, knowing the time had come to address the elephant in the room. "Sarah," I began, my voice gentle but firm, "I'd like to ask about your condition. What exactly is it that's making you so ill?" Sarah turned to me suddenly, her face a mix of surprise and discomfort that made my heart ache with concern. The weight of Sarah's words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. "Ashley," she said, her eyes cast down, "Mama doesn't like talking about that." I saw a shadow of sadness flit across her face quickly. Bless her heart, I could see how uncomfortable she was, so I chose my words as carefully. I told her I understood it was a sensitive topic, but weren't we sisters now? I explained how much I cared for her and that I wasn't just some stranger off the street anymore. I tried to wrap my words in genuine kindness, hoping to create a safe space for Sarah to open up. Sarah looked at me then, her eyes swirling with more emotions. She agreed that I was like a sister to her now, but her smile was fragile. Then she shared something that made my heart skip a beat. Mama had never really explained what her illness was. Sarah said Mama just kept telling her she was sick, that it was hard to cure, and that she probably couldn't live a normal life outside this house. But Mama always assured her they'd be fine, just the two of them. Well, I'll tell you, my curiosity was piqued, and worry started gnawing at me. I asked her, my voice as gentle as a spring breeze, if it was cancer, if that's why her head was shaved. I wondered aloud why she wasn't going to the hospital for treatment or seeing other doctors. Sarah shook her head slowly, looking uncertain. She didn't know if it was cancer, she said. Mama had never taken her to a hospital, she told me. Instead, Mama gave her all her medicine and took care of her at home. When Sarah got really weak, Mama would give her medicine through an IV herself. Mama always said it was best for her, and it did make her feel better. Well, I felt my heart breaking like a dam giving way. I moved closer to Sarah, opening my arms to offer a comforting hug. I told her gently that I understood, and that now she had me too. I assured her that if she wanted to keep this just between us, that was fine. There was no need to tell Mama about our talk. As I held Sarah close, my mind was racing fast. This situation is peculiar, I thought to myself, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle in my heart like a stone. My mind was filled with endless questions, searching for answers that seemed out of reach. The relationship between Lisa and Sarah was far from ordinary, and there was an unsettling atmosphere that I couldn't ignore. I couldn't understand why Sarah's illness was surrounded by so much secrecy. This home treatment, without any involvement from outside medical professionals, contradicted everything I knew about proper healthcare. As I held Sarah, I was acutely aware of how fragile she felt in my embrace. I thought to myself that there must be more to this story, hidden layers that I needed to uncover. I knew I had to proceed with caution, keeping my senses alert to understand the true nature of the situation. My heart was burdened with questions. How could I discover the truth about Sarah's health? How could I bring some positivity into this somber household and make a meaningful difference? I realized that understanding the complex dynamics between mother and daughter was crucial. Perhaps, I thought, I could be the catalyst for change, promoting a more open, caring, and effective approach to Sarah's care. I felt compelled to try, for Sarah's sake. That embrace became my silent vow to seek the truth and provide Sarah with the love and care she deserved. In the days that followed, I noticed a stark change in Lisa's demeanor. The once kind and warm doctor began treating me with unexpected and distressing coldness. My every action seemed to agitate Lisa, and minor mistakes were blown out of proportion. Despite my best efforts to maintain the house, nothing I did appeared to meet her standards. On a particularly tense afternoon, Lisa confronted me with harsh words. She asked if I wanted her daughter to die, her voice filled with anger and accusation. She claimed to have found an excess of dust in Sarah's room, reminding me of Sarah's compromised immune system. Caught off guard by this sudden attack, I felt deeply shaken and confused. I tried to explain, my voice unsteady with emotion. I assured her that I had been diligently cleaning Sarah's room daily, and expressed my sincere apologies if my efforts had fallen short. I looked at Lisa imploringly, feeling a profound sense of injustice. Lisa's words cut through me like a knife. She told me she wasn't interested in my apologies, only in actions. Her tone was harsh and unforgiving as she said I clearly wasn't doing enough. Then she hit me with a threat that chilled me to the bone. If I didn't shape up, I might find myself back at the orphanage. Tears welled up in my eyes as sadness and fear mingled in my heart. I begged her to forgive me, promising I'd do better. The thought of leaving, of losing Sarah, whom I'd grown to love, was more than I could bear. Lisa drew close, her words sharp and threatening. She reminded me that I wasn't brought here to cause problems, and warned me not to think I could come between her and her daughter. Her voice was low but filled with menace. She'd heard I'd been asking a lot of questions about Sarah's illness, she said. She reminded me that she didn't like nosy people and that she was the doctor here. Any questions should be directed to her, she insisted. A chill ran down my spine at her words. They cut through the sense of safety and belonging I'd begun to feel. Lisa went on, her eyes fixed on me, saying she and Sarah had a very strong bond. They knew everything about each other, she claimed. She finished with a warning that she'd be watching me. All I could do was nod through my quiet tears. I knew I'd have to be even more careful and observant, both to keep my place in this house and to understand the true nature of Lisa and Sarah's relationship. That night, I knelt beside my bed, the room dim with the soft glow of a lamp. I clasped my hands together, closed my eyes, and began to pray with all the emotion and fervor welling up from the depths of my heart. I was kneeling by my bed, my heart heavier than a lead weight. Lord, I began, my voice shaking like a leaf in the wind, I'm scared to death of what Lisa might do. The thought of going back to the orphanage sent chills down my spine. After tasting what it's like to have a family, I just couldn't bear the thought of losing it all. And Sarah, bless her heart, I loved her like a real sister now. I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the flood of tears threatening to spill over. Despite my fear, I knew I couldn't turn a blind eye to Sarah's strange illness and her relationship with Lisa. Something was off, and even though I wasn't expert, I knew this wasn't normal. My voice grew firm, reflecting the determination building inside me. I asked the Lord for a sign, to show me if I should dig deeper into this whole situation. As I opened my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to find a sliver of peace in the storm of emotions, the doorbell rang out of the blue. I jumped up like I'd been shot, my heart racing as I headed for the door. Lo and behold, there was Jane, the cleaning lady who came every other week. She greeted me with a kind smile, saying the house was looking spick and span thanks to my hard work. Still a bit on edge, I confessed I'd been cleaning more after getting an earful from Lisa. The sadness in my voice was plain as day, showing the pressure I was under. Jane's tone turned playful, but I could see real concern in her eyes. She asked if I'd been adopted as a daughter or hired as an employee, wondering what I'd done to get Lisa all riled up. I hesitated for a moment, then admitted I'd only asked about Sarah's illness. Jane's expression changed fast, and her hand flying to her mouth. She cut our chat short, her voice suddenly turned serious. Jane told me she relied on this job for her livelihood, but she could see I had a kind heart. She advised me that if I wanted to stick around, I shouldn't go poking my nose into Sarah's business. A shiver ran through me like I'd just stepped into a freezer. I'll try, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but I can't help worrying about Sarah. As I watched Jane leave, her warning weighing on me like a ton of bricks, I knew something fishy was going on in this house. When Lisa was out for long stretches, Sarah and I grew close. We shared secrets, laughed together, and built a bond that went beyond our circumstances. I started to see that under Sarah's childlike exterior, there was a sharp, dreamy young woman hiding. One day, while helping Sarah get ready for her bath, I felt bold enough to ask her something more personal. As I fiddled with the water temperature, I asked her if she had any wishes, anything she really wanted to do. Sarah, perched near the tub, looked at me with a faraway expression. She said, soft as a whisper, that she'd love to hear the sound of the sea. She wanted to feel the waves on her feet, and even experience a nice romance. Her voice dropped lower, like she was afraid of being overheard. She confessed she'd found romance novels in the library and dreamed of being free from her illness, living like a normal young woman. I was surprised. I smiled at her gently, telling her how wonderful that was and that I hadn't known she thought about romance. I assured her she'd find a lovely romance someday because she deserved it, and that she'd be free from her illness too. I hesitated, choosing my words like I was picking through a minefield. I told Sarah she'd be free from her illness one day, and shared my own dreams of having a family, maybe even nieces and nephews now. I promised I'd do anything to help her, my heart swelling with determination. Sarah looked at me with eyes shining like stars, hope dancing in them. She said I was already doing more than I should, her voice thick with gratitude. She couldn't understand why Lisa was so hard on me, and bless her heart, it made my heart ache. I shrugged it off, telling her I was used to it from my days in the orphanage. What mattered now, I said, was that we were together and I could help her. After Sarah's bath, as I helped her dress, she stumbled, fear flashing across her face like lightning. Before I could react, she crumpled, her head hitting the marble countertop with a sound that still echoes in my nightmares. Sarah! I screamed, terror gripping me like an icy hand as I cradled her unconscious form. I tried desperately to wake her, shaking her and calling her name, begging her not to leave me alone. Through my tears, I pleaded, telling her she was the only good thing that had ever happened to me. My heart was a storm of fear and determination to save her, come hell or high water. Knowing I had to act fast, I reached for the phone with shaking hands, going against Lisa's strict orders. As I dialed 911, my heart was pounding like a drum in my ears. The calm voice on the other end asked what my emergency was, and I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. My voice shaking like a leaf as I tried to explain the emergency to the 911 operator. I told them my sister Sarah had fainted and hit her head hard, and that she wasn't waking up. The fear in my voice must have been as clear as a bell when I said how scared I was. The operator was calm, asking for our address and assuring me they'd send an ambulance pronto. I rattled off the address fast, fighting the panic that was trying to take hold of me. I mentioned Sarah's illness, explaining that I didn't know exactly what it was because Lisa kept us in the dark. Please hurry, I begged, my voice thick with emotion, she's all I've got in this world. The operator tried to comfort me, telling me to stay calm and not to move Sarah unless absolutely necessary. They said to keep talking to her and that they'd stay on the line until help arrived. Cradling Sarah gently, I started talking to her, hoping against hope that she could sense I was there. Sarah, please hear me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm right here. You're gonna be okay. Help is coming. As tears flowed freely down my face, I stroked her hand, waiting for the sound of sirens. At the hospital, I waited on pins and needles while the medical team sprang into action. When Sarah finally came to, she was as confused. A lady doctor approached me, and I explained that I was Sarah's sister, sharing what little information I had. My voice quivering like a leaf in the wind as I tried to explain Sarah's condition to the doctor. I told her about Sarah's sudden fainting spell and the mysterious illness that kept her housebound, according to Lisa. The uncertainty and fear in my voice must have been plain. The doctor nodded, her face a mask of professional calm. She explained they'd run a battery of tests to figure out what caused Sarah to faint. For now, Sarah was stable and out of danger, she said, and the head injury wasn't as bad as we'd feared. It was a small comfort in the midst of all that chaos. Sarah, bless her heart, had been listening to our conversation and grabbed my arm like it was a lifeline. She begged me in a whisper to take her home, her eyes wide with panic. She said she was scared of Lisa, that I didn't know what Lisa was capable of, that she'd destroy me. Looking at Sarah, I felt a determination settle over me. I told her nothing else mattered now except her health, squeezing her hand tight. I promised to take care of her. When the doctor came back, her face was as unreadable as a stone tablet. It set my nerves jangling like an old wind chime. The doctor said she had good news and some confusing news, looking between us back and forth. Sarah was all in a tizzy, clearly itching to leave the hospital. She spoke up quick as a flash, asking for the good news first and saying she wanted to go home. The doctor nodded, still looking puzzled. She said the good news was that Sarah didn't have any major health issues. But the confusing part, she said, was that Sarah didn't seem to have any serious health problems at all. The only real issue they found was severe malnutrition and a vitamin D deficiency, likely from lack of sunlight. She said there were no signs of cancer or evidence of past cancer treatments. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning, the doctor's words confirming all my suspicions and gut feelings. Sarah, bless her heart, looked like she couldn't believe it and got all defensive. She said the doctors didn't know anything, that her mother was a better doctor and knew more about her condition. I asked to speak with the doctor privately, feeling like I was about to spill a secret I'd been holding onto for dear life. I told her about the strange relationship between Lisa and Sarah, how I'd started to think Lisa might be keeping Sarah sick on purpose. I mentioned how I'd noticed Lisa regularly shaving Sarah's head, even though her hair wasn't falling out. The doctor listened like her life depended on it, looking more worried by the second. She asked if I had ever heard of factitious disorder, imposed on another, and explained that it is a condition where someone intentionally makes another person ill for attention or control. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. That's it, I said, feeling shocked but relieved to finally understand what was going on. When I went back to Sarah's room, my heart sank when I realized she was gone. I searched that hospital like a mad woman, asking every nurse and security guard I could find, but no dice. Finally, outside the hospital, a taxi driver approached me, saying he'd seen a thin girl in hospital clothes get into the cab before his. I felt fear grip me. My heart racing faster when I realized Sarah had run away, probably heading back to that house of horrors. The thought of Lisa finding her sent chills down my spine. I was crying like a baby, feeling more desperate than I ever had in my life. She can't go back to that crazy woman, I sobbed, my words dripping with fear and anguish. The taxi driver must have seen how upset I was and offered to drive me to Lisa's house. Let's get a move on, he said, and we took off like a shot towards the neighborhood. When we pulled up, I saw police cars parked out front and my stomach dropped. There was Lisa, hugging Sarah and yelling at the police. She was spinning some tale about me being a no-good orphan who'd kidnapped her sick daughter. Sarah, poor thing, was trying to defend me through her tears. She told Lisa not to talk that way, that I was just trying to help when she fainted. She swore nothing happened at the hospital, all the while looking at me like she was trying to send me a secret message. I was scared. I didn't want to end up on the street, so I played along, agreeing with Sarah and apologizing to Lisa. I'm sorry, I said, still crying like a fountain. I just panicked and didn't know what to do. The police officer looked at us all. He said it was clearly a family matter and we should sort it out ourselves. Then he hightailed it out of there fast. I begged Lisa for forgiveness, but she was cold as ice. She told me my apologies meant nothing and to get out of her house, saying I belonged on the streets. My heart broke as Sarah begged her mother not to throw me out. Lisa was stubborn, though, and wouldn't budge an inch. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, if I could at least get my things. When I tried to give Sarah a hug, goodbye, Lisa blocked me like a guard dog. I was packing my meager belongings into my backpack when the door flew open. There stood Sarah, shaking like a leaf and looking scared half to death. It was clear that she'd snuck away from her mother. I was shocked and worried, telling her Lisa would be mad if she found us together. Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes, a mix of gratitude and sadness on her face. She told me I'd given her the best days of her life and that she loved me like a sister. My heart swelled with sisterly love and determination. I told Sarah we could run away together, that I'd heard what the doctor said. I explained that she wasn't sick, that Lisa was keeping her weak and locked up. I said her hair would grow normally if Lisa stopped shaving it, and we could go see the ocean together. But Sarah shook her head, conflict written all over her face. She said she couldn't leave her mother, that she was all Lisa had. It felt like my heart was being torn in two. Sarah looked so small and scared, saying she couldn't leave her mother. I felt a fire light up inside me, and I told her straight out that what Lisa was doing was sick. I said she had a right to live her own life, to be happy and see the world outside those four walls. It isn't fair, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. I'm going to find a way to save you, Sarah. She hugged me then, crying like her heart was breaking. She said she'd miss her sister, her words all choked up with tears. That hug felt like goodbye and a promise all rolled into one. Then Lisa burst in like a bull, mad as a hornet. She screamed at me to get out of her house, calling me a traitor and a pitiful person with no family. The venom in her voice was enough to make your blood run cold. I gave Sarah one last look before I left, tears streaming down my face. I knew I had to go, but I made a quiet promise to myself that I'd find a way to save her. There I was, standing on the street all alone, with nothing but a backpack and the little money I'd managed to scrape. I felt like I was in a fog, trying to get my bearings under the weight of uncertainty and fear. Oh Lord, I prayed, help me. What in the world am I supposed to do now? Then, like a bolt from the blue, I remembered the doctor who'd explained Sarah's condition and hinted that Lisa might be breaking the law. A new determination lit up inside me. I decided to go back to the hospital and find that doctor who'd helped us before. When I got there, I poured my heart out to her, telling her everything that had happened through my tears. I begged her to help me save Sarah, my voice thick with emotion. That kind doctor, bless her heart, she hugged me like I was her own child. She said she'd gather all of Sarah's test results and talk to the police and social services to find me a place to sleep. We went to the police station together, and the doctor explained Sarah's delicate situation. She told them we needed to act fast to save this young woman who was in danger. That's when I remembered Lisa would be working the next day, and I suggested a plan. I said we could go rescue Sarah with the police and wait for Lisa to come home. The police officer listened carefully, agreeing that the situation was serious. He said the test results were smoking gun evidence, but we'd need Sarah's testimony to take legal action. I felt relief wash over me, knowing we had support, but I knew the road ahead would be tough. The next morning, after Lisa left for work, I arrived at the house with the police to start our rescue mission. When I called for Sarah, it was Jane who opened the door. Her face was scared, but when she recognized me, she burst into tears and hugged me tight. She said the good Lord had finally answered her prayers. She told me Sarah had filled her in and offered me a place to stay if I needed it, saying her house wasn't much, but her heart wanted to help. I was touched by her kindness, but I had to explain that I'd come with the police to rescue Sarah. She was ready to spill the beans to the police about everything she'd seen in that house over the years. While the police were taking statements, I found Sarah, and we hugged. I told her she needed to be strong as an ox now, that this was our only chance. Sarah was shaking like a leaf, saying she couldn't do that to her mother, that she loved her. I held her close and told her we were sisters for life, that I'd never abandon her, and we'd see the ocean together someday. Those words seemed to light a fire under her, and she agreed to talk. Before she went to the police, she made me promise I'd never leave her, and I swore that I wouldn't. When Lisa pulled up and saw what was happening, she went completely off her rocker. She came flying out of that car, screaming about her sick baby. When she saw me coming out with Sarah, her eyes were red with anger. The police slapped the cuffs on her fast. They told her she was under arrest for abuse, unlawful imprisonment, and attempted murder. Seeing all this unfold, Sarah cried her eyes out, and I held her close. Sarah finally let out all those pent-up feelings. It was like a dam breaking, with years of hurt and confusion pouring out. She started by begging Lisa for forgiveness, her voice shaking like a leaf in the wind. She asked Lisa why she'd done all this, each word coming out between sobs, carrying years of pain. Sarah told Lisa she'd always believed in her, trusted her, that Lisa had been her whole world and only truth. But now she was asking why Lisa had made her a prisoner, telling her she was sick when she wasn't. She wanted to know why Lisa had kept her from everything, starving her of life itself. Sarah looked at Lisa, searching for answers in her eyes like a lost child. She said all she'd ever wanted was to be Lisa's daughter, to be loved by her. But now she realized Lisa's love had been a prison, one that nearly took her life. Sarah's voice grew stronger as she told Lisa she'd stolen the world from her. She'd taken away Sarah's chances to know things, to explore, to love. Sarah said she'd been living in the shadow of an imaginary illness, believing she was weak and needed Lisa to survive. But now she knew that wasn't true. Sarah's voice was a mix of sadness and anger now, like she was finally letting out years of bottled-up feelings. She told Lisa she'd always love her, but that she'd hurt her in ways she couldn't even explain. Sarah said she needed to learn how to be herself now, not Lisa's sick Sarah, but her own person. Finally, Sarah looked at Lisa one last time, her eyes full of love and pain. She said she hoped Lisa would find peace someday, and that she wanted to find peace too, away from all this. Then she turned to me, looking for comfort from the only person who'd shown her true, unconditional love. Lisa, now in handcuffs, turned to me with fire in her eyes. She said I'd ruined everything, called me a monster for what I'd done. Her words were as sharp as a knife, cutting through the air with bitterness. In the days that followed, justice moved quickly. Lisa got a long stint in the slammer, and all her property was left to Sarah and me. During the trial, I held Sarah as she cried her eyes out. I told her she was finally free to live the life she always deserved. I said we'd go see the ocean, have adventures, and fall in love. Sarah looked at me with eyes full of tears, saying she couldn't put into words how grateful she was. She called me more than a sister, her savior. It was a moment in that courtroom I'll never forget, full of raw emotion and gratitude. With Lisa behind bars and us finally free, Sarah and I faced a future as bright as the sun. We used the inheritance money to plan a trip, and our first stop was the ocean Sarah had always dreamed of seeing. When we got to the beach, I watched Sarah as she took in the vast sea before us. Her hair was long now, waving in the wind like the ocean itself. I asked her how it felt to finally see the ocean, to have her dream come true. Sarah stood there, her feet sunk in the sand, looking out at the vast ocean. She told me she felt God in the waves and love in her heart. Her eyes were shining with tears of joy and gratitude. She said she loved me and would be forever grateful for everything I'd done for her. The years that followed were as sweet as honey, full of happiness and discovery. Sarah found the love of her life, as if it was meant to be, and they had a beautiful baby girl named Lua. It was like life had come full circle for her, wrapping her in love. Now, I'd be lying if I said Sarah didn't think about her mother from time to time, but those memories were painful. We tried to reach out to Lisa, but it always turned into a nightmare because of her bitterness. Eventually, we had to leave the past behind and move forward. I decided to give back to the orphanage where I grew up. In a meeting with the head honchos, I told them I wanted to buy the place. I said I wanted to expand it, fix it up, and rename it Sisters Love Orphanage as a nod to the bond Sarah and I shared. The orphanage folks were all ears and seemed touched by my offer. They said it was unbelievable that I'd really turned the place into a home full of love and hope. I told them I knew what it felt like to be lost and unloved, growing up there. I wanted every child to feel like they had a home, were loved, and had every chance to shine. One peaceful afternoon, Sarah and I were sitting in the garden. She looked at me with a warm smile and broke the silence. She said she sometimes thought about everything we'd been through. I held her hand and told her our journey hadn't been easy, but it had made us stronger in ways we never imagined. Sarah sighed and looked grateful. She said I'd changed her life, showing her a world full of possibilities, love, and hope. We sat there together, watching the sky turn beautiful colors. It was a peaceful moment, a quiet celebration of our bond and the life ahead of us.
If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue sharing touching stories almost every day. Don't miss the next wonderful story coming soon to your screen. We greatly appreciate your support. See you next time.